First of all, I'd like to give you my congratulations on the 2016 CPEO Summit. I'm very impressed with the fact that you are bringing strategic thinking to the industry. The father of business consulting was Peter Drucker, who was probably, in my mind, the most important management consultant of all time. He said, because the purpose of a business is to create a customer, the business enterprise has two, and only these two, basic functions: marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. Marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. In other words, what makes you different. The mind is the ultimate battleground in today's marketing wars. That's really where you win, and that's where you lose. How the mind works was the subject of my very first book, called Positioning: The Battle for Your Mind. It began to explain how you get in and how you don't get into the mind. How the Mind Works continued was the new positioning. This introduced more psychology into how the mind works. And finally, the trilogy was completed with repositioning, which really sort of rounded out what was happening, especially in the business world, because the world had changed since I first started writing these books. The 3 C's that threaten business today are competition, change, and crisis. Let's start with competition. We are in a world of killer competition. The situation is basically it's a battle of brands. Who wins or loses depends on how strong their brand is. Now, what you're facing in today's world is what we call the tyranny of choice. You take dog food. The last time I counted, there are 180 brands of dog food. In the cough cold category, there are 134 brands telling you how they're going to fix your cold. In the bottled water category, a simple product, 2,000 brands all around the globe pushing the fact that their water is the better water. Now, let's get to understand what positioning is all about. How do we define it? Positioning is how you differentiate your product in the mind of the prospect. Because minds are limited. There's not a lot of room to play with in people's minds. In fact, we all carry around what I call our product ladders in the mind. Here's the rent-a-car ladder, for example, a Hertz and an Avis and a National. Now, there's a rule of 7. The mind can really accommodate no more than 7 brands. And of course, it's not equally divided. You see, these 7 brands I just showed you account for 90% of the category. But you'll notice how it's weighted towards the top. Colgate, 28%, Crest, 25%, and it drops down to 11, 10, 6, 3, 2. So you can see that the higher you are on that ladder, the more powerful your position is. Because the product ladder is geometric. 1 is wonderful. To be the leader is a very powerful position. 2 can be terrific. You can be very strong if you're second place. 3 is always threatened. A new player can undermine you. And finally, 4 can be fatal. To be number 4 in a category, you're really in a very weak position. Now, what's important in getting into the mind is understanding the power of oversimplification. In other words, the best way to enter minds that hate complexity and confusion is to oversimplify your message. In other words, the most powerful concept is owning a word in the mind. You own a word in the mind such as overnight, driving, safety. Actually, brands have taken ownership of these concepts. BMW owns driving, the ultimate driving machine. This is how they repositioned Mercedes. They said the ultimate sitting machine versus the ultimate driving machine. Another interesting case study is because minds get confused quickly, you can exploit confusion. This is in the world of drug advertising. Calcium channel blockers is a very big product in the drug world in the United States. And there's an array of different products in this category. Now, in the mind of the physician, with this enormous array of products, there's a lot of confusion as to what should I recommend. Some years ago, we started with that idea. We said, are you confused about calcium channel blockers? And we actually laid out all the different varieties. And then we said to the physician, the latest generation are dihydropyridines. In other words, this is the newer stuff. So that eliminates a whole bunch of brands. Then we went on to say, but only 2 are once a day. We're now down to 2, so we've eliminated a lot of competition. And only 1 drug promises vascular selectivity. That was the positioning strategy. Now, interesting enough, the product is called Plendil. And they had this package design, which is a picture of an orchid. And what we said is, no, if you're going to take ownership of a positioning idea, you've got to put that idea on your package. And we recommended a new package design called Plendil. And right there in the heart of it is vascular selectivity. That's what makes this product different. That's what makes this product unique. Change is the next C. We are in a very rapidly changing world. Technology can force you to adapt your brand to changing circumstances. In other words, you'll have to change your strategy. But you must never lose contact with your basic position. Interesting enough, there's always what we call the better late than never strategy. Let's take Procter & Gamble, probably the most sophisticated market in the United States, and there was some bad news for them. And essentially, the news was captured in a magazine called Business Week, which said some years ago, the Colgate brand captured the toothpaste crown from Crest. In other words, Colgate went right by Crest. Well, Crest had a very clear position, cavity prevention. That's what they built their brand around. The problem was cavities began to disappear, thanks to fluoride and better dentistry. As a result, Crest's market share began to decline as new niche brands appeared. In other words, slowly but surely they were getting eaten away by other brands. And of course, the tooth trends continued. Cavities declining, people living longer, keeping their teeth longer, and then tartar control and gum diseases became much more important in the scheme of things. So we call for a product evolution. In other words, offer a toothpaste that features cavity protection, tartar control, and gingivitis protection. That way you are offering total tooth care. So that was the repositioning strategy. Crest, the pioneer in tooth care. Trouble is, Colgate got there first. They introduced a product called Total, and they essentially talked about advanced fresh and whitening, and they also laid out all of the different benefits that came with this toothpaste. Crest has started to make a comeback. They introduced Crest Pro Health, and they also talked about how, not only do we have cavities, but we have plaque and gingivitis and a whole array of other benefits, tooth care. So in other words, there's an opportunity, if you are disrupted, to come back by essentially adopting some of the same ideas. And today, Colgate is still on top, but Crest is still hanging in there at 28 and 25%. So you have a strong 1 and a strong 2, and of course an array of weaker brands in the category. Now, positioning requires sacrifice, something a lot of companies have a hard time with. Number 1, you can't be everything for everybody. That's the first sacrifice. That will destroy your brand the more you try to be everything. You have to become something. Take Emery Air Freight. Emery Air Freight was one of the original air freight carriers in America. They had overnight, they had 2-day delayed, they had small packages, they had large packages. In other words, they were delivering whatever you want, we'll deliver. Everything for everybody. And along came a new competitor called Federal Express, and they say, I'll tell you what, we'll just do small packages overnight. That became the focus of their strategy, and it was amazingly successful. And of course, that introduces what we call the power of sacrifice. They were able to say, Federal Express, when it absolutely positively has to get there overnight. And they took ownership of that overnight delivery idea. Now we're in the third C, crisis. Here's the strategy. This is a situation when economic environment forces change in strategy to reflect the times. Sometimes companies must add value to their position. You're adding something to the game here. Michelin, very famous tire, said, okay, here's our value. We have more miles, more fuel efficiency, more than what you pay for. In other words, they added a lot of value to their original position. Sonocytes moved to value. Now, this Sonocyte is an interesting company. They pioneered the handheld ultrasound machine. And what it did is it challenged what we call big cart machines. So what you had is big machine performance in a small machine. Its positioning strategy was to establish the leadership perception in this handheld ultrasound category. So Sonocyte became, as a position, the world's leader and specialist in hand-carried ultrasound. This took them for a very long and very successful ride. But then the crisis came along. Hospitals began to feel the financial crisis. The question was how to adjust perceptions to accommodate this new environment. Customers were feeling a financial pinch, so what did they do? They said, why, a small machine is making a big impact in healthcare. And what they went on to talk about is the fact that we have now had the ability to save you money in the world of healthcare, which is a big thing. This machine is much more efficient. All right, finally, repositioning lessons. Sometimes you have to evolve your position. In other words, you have to move on, which you saw in the toothpaste category. Reality is critical in a competitive world. You have to be real. You have to have a sense that, okay, the world is changing. You must have an element of reality in your strategy. Another lesson is focus is critical in a competitive world. That gets away from everything to everybody. Stay focused on what you are and what's your major attribute and essentially what makes you different. Picking up on that idea, differentiation is critical in a competitive world. You have to supply a constant reason why you should be selected instead of your competitors. And this is tough, but this is critical. And here's the problem you all face. It's called the New World Order. If you make a mistake, your competition quickly will get your business, and you don't ever get it back. And that is the tough new world we live in. In this New World Order, positioning and strategy are critical. This is what you and your management people have to understand and how to use.